The ornate chamber of the Galactic Council was a place of power, ancient marble pillars stretching to the heavens, and holographic projections of star systems floating above the central platform. Delegates from hundreds of species milled about, discussing, debating, and trading influence. It was here that the future of the galaxy was decided, a future in which humanity had no say. Ambassador Elena Varick stood quietly at the back of the room, watching the meeting unfold. She had been dismissed for years, her requests for more influence treated as naive dreams of a fledgling species. To the galaxy's elite, Earth was nothing more than a curiosity, primitive, chaotic, and little more than a backwater in the vastness of the stars. Humanity's place in the cosmos was limited to observer status, an honorary position that allowed them no real voice in the matters that shaped galactic politics. At the center of the Council's debate was the expansion of a new interstellar trade route, one that would funnel resources into Alari-controlled sectors. The Alari, the dominant species in the galaxy, were known for their ruthless tactics and technological superiority. Their delegation, with its sleek ships and sharp minds, dominated every conversation. Their leader, Speaker Vale Torin, stood at the forefront, his silvery skin gleaming under the harsh light as he spoke with cold precision. "We must extend the trade routes to the lower sectors," Vale Torin proclaimed, his voice unwavering. "It will bring prosperity to the Council and keep those who would destabilize the galaxy in check. We cannot allow the rise of chaos in the fringes." The Alari delegation nodded in agreement, their sharp eyes gleaming with calculation. Elena had heard this argument before, a call for stability, for unity, under the Alari's iron-fisted rule. It was the same rhetoric that had crushed dissent for centuries. The Alari's version of stability always came with a price: the subjugation of weaker species, the silencing of voices like hers. Elena's mind was elsewhere. As the speaker's words echoed around the chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was on the verge of something much bigger than just another trade agreement. The information she had discovered, what she had found, was dangerous, forbidden, and if she were right, could change everything. But she needed proof that would silence the mocking voices that still saw humans as nothing more than a relic of a forgotten past. Proof that humanity had not merely stumbled into the galaxy's affairs by accident, but had played an integral ancient role in its history. Elena's thoughts were interrupted as Speaker Vale Torin's cold, calculating gaze settled on her. He had seen her shifting restlessly in the back of the room, and it irritated him. He knew the humans were becoming bolder, their presence growing more insistent, but they were still insignificant, weren't they? "Ambassador Varick," he said, his voice smooth, almost patronizing, "I trust your people are not becoming too disillusioned with the progress of the Council." The weight of his words was unmistakable, an insult disguised as politeness. Elena stood a little straighter, her expression steady, refusing to show the anger that boiled beneath the surface. "Not at all, Speaker Vale Torin," she replied, her voice calm and measured. "I simply believe it is time for the Council to consider an important matter." Vale Torin raised an eyebrow, sensing the change in her tone. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Elena took a step forward, her pulse quickening, but her resolve unwavering. "I request a private hearing with the Council," she continued, her voice echoing through the chamber. "A matter of grave importance, one that will forever change your perception of humanity and its place in the galaxy." The room buzzed with murmurs, and for the first time in years, Elena felt something stir within her. She was no longer just the quiet observer. She was about to force the galaxy to confront the truth. The cold winds of Antarctica howled across the barren landscape, a stark contrast to the intense activity unfolding beneath the ice. The underground facility, hidden deep within the continent's frozen heart, was a hub of scientific fervor and secrecy. The vast cavernous halls were lined with advanced technology, equipment scanning, cataloging, and analyzing data from the newly discovered relic. Elena Varick stood in the center of the high-tech lab, surrounded by a team of Earth's brightest minds. She had flown in from Viral Prime just days ago, but the urgency had not diminished since her departure. The discovery beneath the ice was beyond anything humanity could have hoped for, a breakthrough that could shatter the entire framework of galactic history. A long-forgotten artifact, buried and preserved for millennia, had been found within the depths of an ancient chamber. It was not just any relic. It was proof that humanity's place in the galaxy was more profound than anyone, especially the Galactic Council, had ever believed. Dr. Kira Thompson, one of the lead archaeologists, held up a crystalline object, no larger than a human fist. The translucent surface pulsed with an eerie blue glow, as though it were alive. Its surface was etched with patterns that defied comprehension, incomprehensible to any known language. The artifact hummed faintly in her hands. "Is it?" Elena began, her voice barely above a whisper. She had to ask, even though she already knew the answer. "Human-made," Kira finished for her tone tinged with awe. "But this technology is older than any records we have. This predates the Council, perhaps by tens of thousands of years." Elena's mind raced. What she had suspected for months was now undeniable. The artifact held encoded data, and its advanced nature suggested humanity's ancestors had far more than primitive tools. They were once players in an ancient galactic game, a species integral to the galaxy's earliest interstellar alliances. But there was more. Much more. The artifact also contained a set of alien symbols, coded in languages long thought extinct, matching nothing in Council records. As Kira activated the holographic projection embedded in the crystal, images flickered to life. Faded scenes of a civilization with strikingly human features interacting with beings of immense stature, with technology that was centuries ahead of what even the Elari possessed today. "This," Kira muttered as she manipulated the projection. "This is impossible." The figures air. "Humans," Elena finished for her throat tight. The scene displayed humans, not as children of Earth, but as the architects of a once great interstellar empire. But the most shocking part of the data was not just the humans themselves, but their connection to an ancient and now erased alliance of species, the first ones. These beings had once governed the stars before the rise of the Council, and somehow humans had been among them, not as a minor race, but as key players. The first ones had fallen, and so too had humanity's prominence. But the Council's official history had scrubbed them from existence. Elena turned back to the team, the weight of the discovery sinking in. This was no longer about gaining recognition. It was about reclaiming humanity's legacy, a legacy erased by the very species that now held power over the galaxy. "We need to get this to the Council," Elena said, her voice resolute. "This is the proof that will finally show them what they've overlooked for centuries. We aren't just a primitive species. We are the inheritors of an ancient, forgotten history." The words were barely out of her mouth when the first alarm went off, the shrill sound cutting through the tension in the room. "We've been compromised," Dr. Kira said, her face pale. Elena's heart raced. The security footage flickered, showing a fleet of unmarked ships descending on their location. Someone, likely the Elari or worse, someone with even greater influence, had discovered their breakthrough. "We need to move now," Elena snapped. "Prepare the artifact for transport. If we lose this, we lose everything." As the team scrambled to gather their findings, Elena's mind raced with one terrifying thought. The galaxy would stop at nothing to bury the truth. The base in Antarctica was built to withstand the harshest conditions, a fortress of ice and technology. But even its reinforced walls seemed fragile against the looming threat descending from the sky. Elena and her team had just managed to secure the artifact and data when the first impact rattled the compound. The sound was deafening, the vibrations reverberating through the concrete and steel, warning them of the danger now bearing down on them. Elena's heart skipped a beat. The ships that filled the sky were unmistakable. Elari warships, sleek and menacing. Their dark, angular forms cutting through the clouds. She had known the Aelari would never tolerate this discovery. They were the galaxy's gatekeepers, and if what they had found were to become public knowledge, it would shake the very foundation of their power. The ground shook again, and Alina's team scrambled into action, sealing off data rooms and packing up their findings. The base's emergency alarms blared, red lights flashing across the facility's sterile white walls. They had only moments before the Aelari would breach the compound. "Pack everything," Alina ordered, her voice cold and steady. She turned to Dr. Kira, who was already securing the holographic data projection. "Get the artifact into the transport pod. We need to move now." Dr. Kira nodded, her hands trembling as she carefully placed the artifact into a specially designed containment case. Alina felt a rush of adrenaline as she checked the monitor. The Aelari ships were now hovering directly above the base, their energy shields activating, preparing to cut through the atmosphere. The window for escape was closing fast. "Team 1, prepare the transport. Move, now." Alina barked, and the team hurried to the underground hangar where their escape pod waited. But as they reached the hangar, Alina noticed something. Movement in the shadows. A group of soldiers, garbed in stealth suits, emerged from behind the supply crates, their weapons raised. Aelari operatives. Elite forces. Alina's pulse quickened, but her training kicked in. She had expected resistance, but not like this. Ambassador Varric, one of the operatives, spoke, his voice a low growl through the comm system. "You are not leaving here with that data. The Council will not tolerate this." Alina's heart skipped, and she took a step back, her mind racing. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were part of a covert task force designed to eliminate threats to the Aelari's influence. If they didn't get off this base soon, the mission was over. "Take the artifact to the transport," Alina said, turning toward Kira. "I'll hold them off." Without waiting for a response, Alina sprinted toward the soldiers, her pulse pounding in her ears. Her mind raced with calculations. If she could just buy enough time, they could make the escape. But she knew this would be no easy feat. The Aelari were ruthless, and their tactics would leave no room for error. The first operative fired a stun shot. Alina ducked, barely avoiding the blast, and rolled behind a nearby stack of crates. She could feel the heat of the weapon's proximity, and for a moment, everything slowed down. She took a deep breath, assessing the situation. There were at least 6 of them, too many to take on in a straight fight. "Move," she shouted to her team, her voice slicing through the chaos. "I'll buy you time." Without waiting for confirmation, Alina launched herself into action, moving with precision and speed, drawing the attention of the operatives. A quick flash of her sidearm sent one of the soldiers diving for cover, but it was a temporary distraction. The others returned fire, forcing her to dive back into cover, her heart racing as the seconds ticked away. The transport pod was only a few hundred meters away, but with the Aelari on their tail, escape was anything but guaranteed. Alina's grip tightened on her weapon. The artifact had to make it off this planet. If it didn't, everything humanity had fought for would crumble before it even began. "Go!" Alina yelled one last time, hearing the roar of engines in the distance. The transport was ready. She ran for the open bay doors, knowing that this was only the beginning. The real fight was just beginning. The transport pod shot through the atmosphere, the engines roaring to life as Alina and her team escaped the icy grip of Antarctica. Behind them, the Aelari warships hovered like predators in the darkening sky, but it was too late. The pod had already broken through the upper atmosphere, entering the void of space with a forceful jolt. Alina leaned back in her seat, breathing heavily as the adrenaline began to fade. The soft hum of the pod's engine was the only sound as she wiped the sweat from her brow. The artifact, carefully secured in its containment case, lay beside her. For a moment, she allowed herself a breath, just a brief moment of relief. But even as her body relaxed, her mind was already shifting to the next stage. "We made it," Dr. Kira said, her voice shaky, but filled with disbelief. She turned toward Alina. eyes wide with awe. This data, this proof, it changes everything. It changes the way we see the galaxy, the way we understand our history. Do you realize that? Humans were more than just survivors. They were architects of the stars. Elena nodded but remained silent, her gaze fixed on the containment case. She didn't want to get lost in the revelation of what the artifact represented. She had to focus on what it meant for their survival, for the survival of humanity. The galaxy would stop at nothing to erase this truth, and Elena couldn't afford to lose sight of that. The journey ahead was fraught with danger. The Aelari had already sent ships to hunt them down, and there was no doubt they would follow them to the remote world where they intended to examine the artifact further. A desolate, forgotten planet on the edge of the galaxy, where ancient secrets were buried deep beneath the surface. It was a place of legend, whispered about in the dark corners of galactic history, a place the Council had long since deemed off-limits to all but their most trusted operatives. Delmera IV, Elena murmured to herself, the name carrying the weight of forgotten lore. The vault. Dr. Kira's voice interrupted her thoughts. What exactly is on Delmera IV, Elena? Why go there? Elena turned to face the archaeologist, her face hardening. The vault is more than just a storage facility. It's a place where the first ones, those who came before the Council, hid their greatest secrets. It's where the ancient records are kept, untouched by the Council's revisions. If we can gain access to the vault, we'll find proof not just of humanity's past, but of the true origin of the Galactic Order. The Aelari's entire foundation rests on a lie, Kira. And this is how we expose it. A heavy silence filled the pod. The weight of Elena's words settled over them all, and for the first time, the enormity of their mission felt real. This wasn't just about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. It was about unearthing the dark history of the Council itself, the crimes they had committed to maintain their dominance. Do we know what we'll face when we get there? Kira asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. The Aelari won't let this slide. If they catch us, we won't get caught, Elena said firmly. We're not just going to hand them this knowledge. We're going to protect it, no matter the cost. As the stars streaked past the pod's windows, the urgency of the mission grew. Delmera IV was a planet cloaked in mystery, a place few dared approach. Its surface was scared, its atmosphere toxic to most life forms. But beneath its desolate exterior lay something far more important, something that, if activated, would force the galaxy to reckon with the truth of its past. The pod entered hyperspace, its engine shifting into overdrive as the journey to Delmera IV began. They would be arriving in a few hours, and with every passing minute, Elena's resolve hardened. The Aelari wouldn't let them reach the vault without a fight, but she was ready. The stakes were too high for failure. The truth was out there, and it was time for the galaxy to face it. The dark expanse of space stretched out before them, a sea of black punctuated by distant stars, as Elena and her team approached Delmera IV. The planet loomed on the view screen, its surface a barren wasteland, the atmosphere thick with a toxic haze. The very air was lethal to most life forms, and only specially designed suits could allow any hope of survival on its surface. Despite the desolation, Elena felt a sense of resolve settling over her as the pod descended toward the planet's surface. The vault was buried deep beneath the scorched ground, and they had a map, a key, and an urgent purpose to unlock what had been hidden for millennia. They didn't have time to waste. As they made their final approach to the planet's surface, the pod shuddered, its engines humming in the intense gravity. Elena glanced at the others. Kira's eyes were fixed on the console, her fingers moving over the keys, inputting final adjustments. Dr. Marcus Trent, the team's tech specialist, sat beside her, monitoring the pod systems. "Atmosphere is holding steady," Marcus said, his voice tinged with worry. "But the Aelari warships are still out there. I can feel their eyes on us." Elena nodded, her expression hardening. She knew that the Aelari wouldn't let them get away this easily. The moment the discovery had been made, they would have sent every available ship to track them. The hunt was on, and they couldn't afford to be complacent. "Keep moving," Elena ordered. "Once we hit the surface, we'll head straight for the coordinates. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe." As the pod finally touched down on the blackened soil of Delmera IV, Elena's heart raced. The landscape was alien, jagged, and inhospitable, a planet that seemed to have been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Yet beneath this dead world, the secrets of the first ones, the true creators of the galaxy's legacy, awaited. The team donned their protective suits, stepping out of the pod into the toxic atmosphere, their visors reflecting the dying light of the planet. Elena's boots crunched against the cracked surface as they made their way to a narrow canyon, following the coordinates she'd received from the data archives. The vault lay deep below, hidden in the heart of the planet. However, as they moved deeper into the canyon, a series of transmissions interrupted the silence of the dead world. Elena paused, her hand held up in a quiet command for the team to stop. "Someone's listening," she murmured, her voice barely audible through the static. Dr. Trent adjusted his equipment, a frown appearing on his face. "They've triangulated us. I'm picking up faint signals. They're close, but I don't know how. We need to move faster." The tension in the air was palpable. Elena could feel her muscles tense, every instinct screaming at her to hurry. They weren't alone anymore. Just as she started to turn, a burst of static filled the comms. "This is Ambassador Varric," a voice crackled through the interference. "I have information regarding humanity's rightful place in the galaxy, the truth that you've been hiding." Elena froze, the words striking her like a physical blow. The voice was unmistakable. It was her voice, broadcast across the galaxy. "Who did this?" Elena hissed under her breath. "Who broadcasted this?" Kira looked up, her face pale behind her helmet. "It's everywhere. The signals reached the entire sector. The galaxy will know what we've uncovered. This isn't what I wanted," Elena muttered, anger creeping into her voice. "This wasn't for political theater." "Does it matter?" Kira shot back, her tone sharp. "You've just sparked a rebellion." Elena's heart raced as the implications hit her. Her message, was broadcast at a time when tensions within the Council were already at their peak. Smaller species, oppressed and ignored by the Aelari, would seize upon it. They'd demand answers. The truth was already spilling out, and now, it was no longer just the Aelari who would be hunting them. It was the entire galaxy. "This changes everything," Elena said, her mind working furiously. "The Aelari will move quickly to suppress this, but they can't do it alone anymore. Others will rise. This rebellion, this war for the truth, has already begun." The comms crackled again. This time, the voice was not from her past broadcast, but from someone else, a deep, booming voice Elena didn't recognize. "You've made a powerful enemy, Ambassador Varric," the voice warned. "You've set a chain of events into motion that cannot be undone, and the truth will not remain hidden. The vault will be opened, but not by you." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving only the sound of the wind whistling through the canyon. Elena stood still for a moment, her pulse pounding. Whoever had made that threat knew more than they were letting on. "Let's move," Elena said, her voice cold with determination. "We can't let them stop us. Not now." The rebellion was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. And Elena Varric had just become its symbol. The wind howled through the narrow canyon, a mournful sound that echoed against the jagged cliffs. Elena's heart raced as she motioned for her team to move forward, their boots crunching on the ash-like dust of Delmera IV. The moment the broadcast had gone live, everything had changed. What had started as a secretive mission to uncover humanity's true place in galactic history was now a spark that would ignite a war across the stars. The vault, hidden deep beneath the planet's surface, was their only hope to uncover the full truth before the galaxy descended into chaos. But Elena knew the odds. The Aelari would stop at nothing to prevent this discovery from becoming public. The threat of war hung heavy in the air, and there were whispers, echoes of something greater at play, something that threatened to unravel everything. "Do you hear that?" Marcus Trent, the tech specialist, interrupted Alina's thoughts. His voice crackled over their comms as he adjusted the equipment on his wrist. "I'm picking up something. Strange. It's faint, but definitely not random." Alina turned to face him, a frown creasing her brow. "What do you mean? Is it Aelari?" "Could be," Marcus replied. "But there's something off about the signal. It's encrypted, much more advanced than anything I've encountered, and it's coming from beneath us." Alina's pulse quickened. The vault wasn't just a place for ancient records. It was a key to something bigger, something the Aelari had long since buried and were willing to kill to keep hidden. "We're close," she said, determination creeping into her voice. "Let's move. No distractions." The path grew steeper as they descended further into the canyon, the entrance to the vault now only a few hundred meters away. The ground beneath their feet was cracked and uneven, the air thick with the acrid stench of sulfur. The sky, a murky shade of purple, offered no comfort. The desolation of Delmera IV felt suffocating, as though the very planet was rejecting them. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the entrance. It was hidden behind a rock face, but there, carved into the stone, was an inscription, ancient symbols that seemed to shimmer as though alive. Kara approached the entrance, her fingers running over the glyphs. "This is it," she whispered. "The vault's entrance." Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. Everything they had fought for had led to this moment. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, a translator they had adapted using the knowledge gleaned from the artifact. As she pressed it against the inscription, the symbols began to glow, shifting and rearranging themselves in real time. The massive stone door groaned and slowly began to rise, revealing a dark, hollow expanse beyond. A rush of cold air hit them as the vault's interior came into view, an enormous chamber filled with towering structures that seemed to stretch beyond the reach of their lights. It's beyond anything I imagined," Kira breathed, her voice awestruck. But Alina didn't share her awe. The sense of unease that had been gnawing at the edges of her thoughts had only grown stronger. The vault was too easy to find, too well preserved. The Aelari had kept this place hidden for millennia. Why would they let her discover it now? "We need to be careful," Alina warned, her voice sharp. "We're not alone here." She moved forward, the others following closely behind. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with strange devices, machines that seemed to hum with an energy all their own. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and upon it rested an ancient tome, bound in what appeared to be metallic skin. Alina's breath caught in her throat. This was it. This was the truth, the knowledge that could change everything. Just as she reached for the book, a sudden, deafening sound shattered the silence. The ground beneath them trembled, and the room's lights flickered wildly. Alina spun around, her hand instinctively going for her weapon. A voice boomed from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here, Ambassador Varric." Alina's blood ran cold. The voice was familiar. It was the same voice that had warned her earlier. "Who are you?" Alina demanded, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The shadows in the corner of the room shifted, and a figure stepped forward. Tall, cloaked in dark, flowing robes, with eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. He was not Aelari. He was something else entirely. "The time has come for the galaxy to face its reckoning," the figure said, his voice deep, resonant, and filled with the weight of millennia. "And you, Ambassador, have opened the door to a truth that will destroy everything." Alina's hand tightened on her weapon, but she didn't fire. This was no ordinary threat. Whoever, whatever, this figure was, he was far more dangerous than the Aelari. "You think you can stop me?" Alina asked, her voice low and dangerous. "I've already made my choice. Humanity's legacy will be known. The figure smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only the promise of an unimaginable future. "We shall see," he replied, as the ground beneath their feet began to rumble, the vault's secrets beginning to awaken. The ground trembled beneath Alina's feet, a deep, resonant rumble that shook the walls of the vault. The figure before her, his eyes glowing like embers in the dark, shifted slightly, as though he was aware of the growing tremor in the chamber. Alina's grip tightened on her weapon, but she knew it was no use. This wasn't a fight she could win with a simple blaster. The very air around them seemed to crackle with energy, as though the vault itself had come to life. The figure raised his hand, a gesture that seemed to calm the tremors. "You have awakened something far greater than yourself, Ambassador Varric. Something the Aelari have hidden for a reason." Alina's pulse raced, her heart pounding in her chest. She had expected danger, but this was something else entirely. The figure's presence was like an overwhelming force of nature, an ancient power that rippled through the very fabric of the vault. He was no mere mortal. He was something older, something tied to the planet, to the vault, to the very foundation of galactic history. "Who are you?" Alina demanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at the edges of her resolve. "What is this place?" The figure's lips curled into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. "I am what remains of the first ones, the guardians of the knowledge you so desperately seek. This vault is not merely a storage of records. It is a prison, a place of ancient power that has been kept hidden for eons." Kiara stepped forward, her expression a mixture of awe and confusion. You're one of them. The first one." The figure nodded, his movements fluid, almost otherworldly. "I am the last of my kind, left behind to guard the secrets of the galaxy's true origin. Your people, humans, were once part of a vast empire, one that spanned the stars before the rise of the Aelari. They have worked tirelessly to erase all traces of your existence, for your species holds a key that they dare not allow to resurface." Alina's mind raced, trying to process the enormity of what the figure had just revealed. The Aelari weren't just suppressing humanity's past, they were actively erasing it, hiding the true history of the galaxy and their own role in shaping it. But why? Why hide this truth? Alina asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. What could be so dangerous that the Aelari would go to such lengths? The figure's gaze grew heavy, and for a moment, Alina felt a weight in her chest, as though the truth he was about to reveal would crush her. Because the truth is not just about the past, it is about the future. The Aelari have built their power on the foundation of a lie. They are not the true rulers of the galaxy. Your species, humanity, was the first to wield the power of the stars. You were the architects of the galaxy's foundation, the creators of the first interstellar empire. The room seemed to grow colder, and the vault's walls seemed to pulse, as though reacting to the figure's words. Alina felt a cold chill race down her spine. The Aelari have suppressed humanity's true history because they fear what will happen if the galaxy learns the truth. The power that once flowed through your species is not gone. It is merely dormant. And when it awakens, the figure's voice trailed off, leaving the threat hanging in the air. Alina's mind was reeling. The artifact they had discovered, the data it contained, it wasn't just a record of humanity's forgotten history. It was a key, a beacon that would awaken the power of the first ones once again. The galaxy had never known true chaos, not until humanity's legacy resurfaced. The Aelari fear the return of humanity's power. The figure continued, because it would mean the end of their reign. You have the ability to reclaim your rightful place in the galaxy, but the question is, will you? Alina's heart pounded in her chest. The weight of the decision before her felt almost unbearable. The galaxy she had known, the fragile peace that had held for centuries, was built on a lie. If she revealed the truth, it would shatter everything. The Council, the Aelari, the galaxy's entire political order. But there was something else, something deeper. The figure was offering her a choice, but there was a price to it. He wasn't just talking about revealing the truth. He was talking about the return of humanity's ancient power, a power that could reshape the galaxy in their image. "I didn't come here to rule the stars," Alina said slowly, her voice firm, yet filled with the weight of the choice. "I came here to bring humanity's legacy to light, but I won't play your game." The figure's eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion. "The game, Ambassador, is already in motion. You cannot stop what has already begun. The truth will find its way to the stars, whether you are ready or not." With those final words, the figure turned, disappearing into the shadows of the vault. The tremors ceased, the air around them growing still once again. Alina stood there, her heart pounding, as the enormity of what had just transpired sank in. They had uncovered the truth, but now, the real battle was just beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. The silence that followed the figure's disappearance felt almost oppressive. Alina stood frozen, her thoughts swirling in a storm of uncertainty and revelation. The last of the first ones had spoken the truth. The galaxy's history was a lie, and humanity was not merely a survivor of a brutal conquest. No, humanity had been the architects of the stars, the creators of the very galaxy the Aelari had worked so tirelessly to dominate. And now, the dormant power of humanity's legacy was on the verge of awakening. Alina looked at her team. Kira was staring wide-eyed at the spot where the figure had vanished, her expression a mixture of awe and fear. Marcus had his hand resting on his weapon, but his eyes were focused on the tome in the center of the vault, the last artifact of their forgotten empire. "What now?" Kira asked, her voice trembling with both excitement and dread. Alina swallowed hard, her mind racing. The figure had been right. The power humanity once wielded was still there, buried beneath centuries of suppression. But it was clear now that revealing this power would change everything, not just for humanity, but for every species in the galaxy. "We can't keep this here," Alina said firmly, her voice steady. "The Aelari won't stop until they destroy us all. We need to get this information out, but we need to be smart about it. We don't give them a chance to wipe it away." Marcus nodded, his fingers already flying across the console on his wrist. "I've already started transmitting a decoy signal. We'll disguise the real data, send it to multiple locations, encrypted beyond their reach. It won't be easy, but it'll slow them down long enough for us to make our next move." Alina's gaze turned to the tome on the pedestal. She could feel its power calling to her, its secrets almost tangible in the air. This was the key to unlocking humanity's forgotten history. This was what the galaxy had been waiting for, whether it was ready or not. But as she stepped forward to take the book, a cold realization settled in her gut. The figure's words echoed in her mind. The game is already in motion. Alina wasn't just fighting for knowledge anymore. She was fighting for the future of humanity, and for the galaxy's very soul. "There's no turning back now," Alina murmured to herself as she took the book into her hands. It was heavier than she had expected, its metallic surface cold and smooth. The weight of it was not just physical, but symbolic. It was humanity's past, and their future, all bound together in this one object. "We'll need allies," Alina continued, her voice resolute. "The galaxy is already stirring, and once the truth starts spreading, the Aelari will come after us with everything they have. But we're not alone. There are others who will rise with us." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical. "You think anyone's really going to listen to us, after everything the Aelari have done to bury humanity's history?" "They'll listen," Alina said, her tone unwavering. "Because this is bigger than any one species or empire. This is about the balance of power in the galaxy, and the truth is something no one can ignore forever." As Alina held the book, she felt the weight of history settle over her shoulders. The Aelari would come for them, but they were no longer the dominant force. Humanity's time was coming again, and this time there would be no hiding. "We'll need to find a way to rally the others," Kira said. determination flashing in her eyes. The smaller factions, the oppressed species, the ones the Aelari have trampled. They'll be the key. Alina nodded. Exactly. And when they rise, we'll be ready. The team began their work, preparing to leave the vault with the artifact and the knowledge they had uncovered. But as they moved through the ancient chamber, Alina's mind was already on the future. The galaxy would never be the same. The Aelari would fight to maintain their stranglehold, but the truth was out. And with it, humanity's destiny had been reborn. The battle for the galaxy's future was just beginning, and Alina knew one thing for certain. The Council's certainty had crumbled. The galaxy would now face a new era, one where the truth would no longer be denied.